And welcome everybody to the September 24th, 2020 stream for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. I'm one of your hosts, Ben McHale, Dean, producer of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. With me, as always, is Japa, creative director. How are you doing, Chris?
Hey everybody, doing well?
And of course, this would not be a complete stream without David Roenick Schlau, our senior content creator. Hi, Dave.
Hey guys, what's happening?
So today we are going to talk a little bit about the Dire Lord. We're going to show you a little bit about the Dire Lord. But first, we wanted to sort of address what's been going on with us in the past few weeks. So starting in September, we opened up the realms again. We were able to do pre-alpha 5 shakeout. What that meant was basically we got the players in, the VIP players in, to sort of test things out, make sure that the realms were still operating, make sure that the server load could happen, or the servers could handle the load, I should say. Just make sure people were able to log in, that sort of thing. So we did uncover a few bugs, and we were able to get those relatively fixed up in short time as well. And then we thought, well, you know what? We should probably do another one just to make sure that we're crossing our I's and dotting our T's. And so a couple weeks later, we opened up the realms again. And during those 2 weeks, we were able to get quite a bit more done. What did we get done in those 2 weeks? We added faction. What else?
Faction system came online. We finished our chat system refactoring, and quite a bit of bug fixes / optimization / improvements / just further developments of different systems. We're going to go over the whole complete list here in a little bit when we get to our patch notes.
Cool. We opened up Avendir's Pass for the players the second week as well.
Yeah, that's right. We did have Avendir's Pass open, so it was good times. It was nice to get in there with the VIPs, with the pledgers, and just sort of get in there and have some fun and see what they were saying. They gave us a lot of valuable feedback, but all in all, we had a really
better volume-wise? Sounds like I'm coming through really, really loud.
Yeah, I'm going to turn you guys both down a little bit. It's.
I'm reading that your volume could come up a hair, Ben, and mine could come down a hair.
Yeah, all right. Let's try that.
I'm just right. That makes me.
Yeah, you're in a good spot.
Okay. So we got in there. We were able to play with some of the pledgers, have a good time, get some good feedback. There are a lot of cool things about it. It was just nice to get people in game again. What were some of the things that stood out for you, Dave?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head for me. I think just getting the players in there, you build this world and you're kind of running around with just the members of the team, and then it's flooded with other players and watching them kind of do all the tasks and watching them sort of discover all the perception pings. And just, I think my favorite part was definitely as players sort of got into AVP and saw the scale of the zone and just were awed kind of by what we were doing, even in the gray box state that things were at. I think that was probably the highlight for me.
What about you, Chris?
Having players in the game is always the highlight, just in and of itself. Specifically, I think it was put on display very strongly that we take our systems very seriously. We take the performance of the game and the sturdiness of our gameplay systems seriously. Not to say that there's not going to be bugs and ways to improve those things, but for those testers especially those who had been in the previous pre-alpha sessions, I think there was very, very clear and deep and important progress on our gameplay systems, the mechanics, and just the overall performance and functionality of the game. So that's really important. I think the other piece is the way the different differentiators that make Pantheon what it uniquely is starting to work together in that kind of concert and harmony, where that gameplay loop is starting to actually stand out. It's not, we have this idea over here and here's kind of a demo of that, and we have this idea over here and there's a demo of that, but it's like I'm playing Pantheon, I'm actually experiencing all these things naturally as I play the game. And I think the potential for how these systems, as they grow and develop and expand across the game world, was really powerful for players and also really powerful for us in the form of affirmation that we really are on the right track.
And the servers, held up really well. Obviously we talk about Kyle a lot and Robert Crane, on the programmer side, and obviously Kurt and his team did a great job. And I want to give a shout out to Madaki too. Like, did an amazing job just, being there for the community all weekend long.
Yeah, it was some long hours for lots on the team. So, but it was a lot of fun too.
Can we do a
So
quick mic test, Ben? I just want to
yeah,
see.
you know what what I'd like to do is I'd like to just get right into the Dire Lord. We did do a pre-recorded portion of the Dire Lord, so we can get into that, where you can actually see the abilities, see what's going on with the Dire Lord. While we're doing that, we'll in the background we'll just sort of fix up Chris's mic for you as well. So without further ado, let's take it to the video.
Hey everybody, Joppa here. Excited to give you a quick introduction to the current state of the Dire Lord class and talk through some of the abilities we'll be taking a look at in action here in a few minutes. Let's start with Relentless Vitality. This is a passive utility, so it's going to live here on my utility bar, and it's going to increase my innate health regeneration depending on my current health. The lower my health becomes, the more this passive will kick in to counteract that by increasing my innate health regeneration up to 20%. Next, we've got Sanguine Blade. This is a very important part of the Dire Lord's repertoire in combat. This is an attack that deals 125% weapon damage and restores 10% of my total health through that attack. Now, this is a good chance to talk a little bit about the mastery system. I'm not going to go through this for every ability, but just a quick explanation of how mastery really is meant to create some meaningful decisions along the way for players on where they're going to invest their mastery points and how it's going to increase the effectiveness and the usability of the various abilities in their arsenal. For Sanguine Blade, the first mastery upgrade is going to reduce the essence cost by 5, and the second mastery upgrade is going to reduce that essence cost by a further 5 points, as well as reducing the cooldown by 2 seconds. And then the final mastery upgrade is going to increase the amount of health return from 10% to 15%. And so you can see with full mastery, this ability will then cost 30 essence instead of 40. It's going to have an 8-second cooldown instead of 10, and I'm going to restore 15% of my total health every time I use this attack. Now, it's an important place to also say that, these numbers are still subject to change as we continue in testing and do further tuning passes. But it does give you, hopefully, a good sense of some of the ways that mastery will help you, increase the power and the effectiveness of your abilities. And if we do it right, give you lots of really meaningful decisions to make as you gain mastery points on where to spend those. Moving on, we'll talk about Provoking Phantoms. This is my taunt, one of my main taunt mechanics as a Dire Lord. When I apply Provoking Phantoms to a target, it will stay on that target, and every time I attack that target and deal damage, I'm going to increase the stack of Provoking Phantoms by 1 all the way up to 20. And the higher the stack of Provoking Phantoms on a target, the more threat I'm going to generate every time I do a threat generating action towards that target. Now, the catch or the constraint on that is it's a very powerful taunt, but I have to make a very careful decision, because if I switch targets and begin attacking a different target, I'm going to lose my Provoking Phantom stacks on the previous target if I do that. And so I have to make a decision in combat whether to use other abilities in my arsenal to try to control a situation where there are other NPCs that need to be, I need to gain their attention, or I need to make the hard decision of losing my Provoking Phantom stack on the current target to switch. Thresh is another melee attack that deals 200% weapon damage and causes the target to bleed for 20% of the inflicted damage over 10 seconds. Our first blood state here, Torrential Veins. This is basically like a stance that the Dire Lord can enter into. And I'll stay in that blood state until I deactivate Torrential Veins or choose a different blood state instead. This is going to increase my base health regeneration by 1, and also the amount of essence that I generate through all of my different essence generating actions and abilities by 20%. We come to Vital Cage, and this is one of my favorite Dire Lord abilities right now. This is a very active tanking ability for Dire Lords against magical targets that deal spell damage. We've talked before about how Dire Lords really are the anti-magic tank. They will excel in fights where they're dealing with spell damage, whereas the warrior with their shield block, for example, which is very adept at reducing incoming physical damage, the Dire Lord has Vital Cage, which is kind of the counterpart of that towards spell damage. So while I'm in combat, I can wrap myself in Resilient Essence for 2 seconds, and that's going to reduce the next source of spell damage by 50% while I'm in combat. And you can see with an 8-second cooldown that this has some really nice uptime. And if we take a look at the mastery for this ability, the first mastery upgrade is going to reduce the essence cost by 10, which is going to bring this down to a 20 essence cost ability. The second mastery upgrade is going to generate 10 essence when spell damage is absorbed by Vital Cage. So not only have I reduced it from 30 essence to 20 in cost, but now I'm going to get 10 essence refunded to me whenever I absorb spell damage with Vital Cage. And then the final mastery upgrade is going to reduce the next source of spell damage by 100%. It's going to completely mitigate that spell damage, all for 10 total essence when you count in the reduction and then the essence return. So very potent ability, a very important ability for the Dire Lord's tanking arsenal. Next we have Harm Shield. And Harm Shield is going to basically put you into a kind of a capsule of your own essence that will serve as a damage shield. And whenever you're hit by physical damage, it's going to deal 8% of that damage back to the attacking enemy if they're within 5 meters. You can see here too that not every single ability has all of their mastery upgrades implemented yet. That is forthcoming as well. We have Deafening Whisper next. Deafening Whisper is going to basically serve as an interrupt for spell casting. It's going to interrupt an enemy spell casting and then silence them for 4 seconds. And this is a melee ranged ability, so you have to be within melee range to use it on a target. We've got Essence Thief. Manifests at the location of an enemy up to 15 meters away, generating 20 essence. This is a great gap closer for the Dire Lord, and it gives you a nice chunk of essence, especially if you're empty, to get a fight started. We've got Lead in Blood. Lead in Blood corrupts the blood of an enemy, slowing their movement speed over 5 seconds until they are completely rooted to the ground, and the target will remain rooted for a further 3 seconds. We have another blood state, the Nightmare Blood state, and this is going to apply 10% of all the damage you deal as bonus threat. So again, if you're in a situation where Provoking Phantoms is applied, but you're behind on threat and you need to generate a bunch of threat quickly, you would jump into the Nightmare Blood state, and that would help you kind of gain that initial amount of threat that you need to clamp that target down. Next we got Blood Fiend. This is going to purge your bloodstream, cleansing the most recent poison or disease effect on you. This is a fun one because with the mastery, eventually we're going to be able to cleanse that and then spread that to an enemy target as well. So it's a very, very interesting ability that allows Dire Lords to actually strategize allowing themselves to become inflicted with certain ailments purely for the purpose of reinfecting a different target with that same debuff. There's lots of really strategic applications of that ability. We've got another passive in Terrormancer. This is going to reduce the duration of fear effects on you by 50%. Sanguine Shield. This ability is going to allow me to create a shield of essence for 5 seconds, and it's going to reduce the damage of all incoming projectiles in a frontal arc by 20%, and increase my essence by 4 when damage is absorbed in this way. And if you pay attention to the wording there, that's all incoming projectiles, not just magical, but that also includes missile-based projectiles, arrows, crossbow bolts, thrown projectiles, things like that. But it is also in that frontal arc kind of way, so it's not going to work if something's behind you or from the side. It does require you to be facing that target. And just a note here for our testers that essence generation is a pending aspect of this ability that is forthcoming as far as the functionality of that. Dire Mark, you're going to see me use this quite a bit with Ronick later here in the gameplay footage. But this allows me to mark a member of the group or a raid for 10 seconds. Whenever that player takes damage, 25% of the damage will be redirected to me. And of course, I can't apply that to myself. Dusk, this is a really cool ability line for the Dire Lord. Infuse darkness into an enemy, reducing their magic resistance by 2 and destroying 10% of their mana over 10 seconds. While active, I'm going to generate 2 essence every 2 seconds. And in its base form, it's only usable on targets with mana. But if we take a look at the mastery, first mastery upgrade is going to reduce the cooldown by 15 seconds. Then the second mastery upgrade is going to allow this to be usable on all targets, not just targets with mana. If the target does not have mana, it's going to generate 1% of my total health every 2 seconds instead of essence. So I can choose to use this on targets without mana with this upgrade to regenerate health as opposed to essence. And then the final upgrade being a further improvement to that. It's either going to cause me to generate 4 essence or 2% of my total health every 2 seconds with that final one. Sanguine Cloak is a passive that's going to just passively increase my magic resistance by 5. We've got Dark Revenge, which after being critically hit, my next Thresh will heal me for 25% of the direct damage that it deals over 5 seconds. We've got the third Blood State here, Essence Leech. After I can, again, change into these blood states as I need to fit the situation. And with Essence Leech, it's going to increase my physical critical chance by 5%, and it's going to cause my critical hits to heal me for 10% of the damage they deal. And finally, Splatter. This is going to take 1 detrimental effect on an enemy, and it's going to spread that to up to 4 additional enemy targets within 5 meters. So that's a very quick overview of several of the core abilities that Dire Lords have available around level 30. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll pick up with the group and see some of these abilities in action. Okay, well, we are here in Avendir's Pass and with our group. And this group, we're all set to level 8. I'm running the Dire Lord, and we've got Ronick and Kyle with us, both running Shaman. And Sacred is manning the Wizard. So here I'm trying to line of sight the Magician, trying to get him to come after me around the tree there, but he's already pretty fixed on Ronick because of the heal aggro fight. Got Provoking Phantoms off, and got him focused on me now. So I'm going to do a little bit of narrating during this footage. I'm going to try not to talk the whole time so that we can enjoy just the gameplay footage, but I will try to pop in and give some comment on some of the highlights with the Dire Lord abilities, some of the different strategies that I'm using in combat, as well as just general highlights about the gameplay and some of the game features that we're seeing. At this point, I was explaining something to the group about those 2 abilities. For a little bit of context, like I said, we're in Avendir's Pass. We are here on the fringes of the Gadai bandit encampment in Avendir's Pass, working a little bit of the bandits on the outskirts, and then here in a second we're going to push our way in deeper. One thing to call out is the faction information in the chat window. This is our faction system at work, which we were able to get implemented before the last shakeout too, so that we could test it, put it through its paces, and it's working beautifully, and it's really exciting, and we'll see a little bit more of that system at work in some of the footage here in a second, but it's already creating some really interesting game situations. But it's important to note because the faction system is what governs not only NPC aggro towards players, but also their social aggro with one another. And these bandits are all aligned with each other as part of that Gadai bandit faction. And so we have to be careful how we move through here to make sure that we're not biting off more than we can chew. I was just highlighting there that I do have the Torrential Veins Blood State running, which is increasing my essence gain in combat. And also highlighting a mushroom there for one of our mana users to pick up. Those mushrooms are pretty sporadic, but if you pick one, then you can eat it, and it'll restore a little bit of mana. So this is where the Dire Lord gets really cool. Even with the small set of abilities I have available at level 8, against magic dealers, magic users, I have Vital Cage, which you'll see me pop here, and that is reducing the incoming spell damage I'm taking from those spells by 50%. And like we saw with the mastery upgrades, that eventually will get up to 100%, a full mitigation. But it creates a really fun, really involved tactical gameplay for the Dire Lord, even at early levels, against magic-based NPCs. So you can see that Ronak just popped Battle Meditation there. Just to say a quick word about that, this is somewhat of an experimental ability that we're trying as a form of tactical engagement for mana users in combat. And got some really good feedback from it already from internal testing. But the way it works and what makes it tactical is that as it stands right now, resource regeneration shuts off in combat. So as a mana user, you're not getting mana back naturally while you're in combat. And what Battle Meditation does is it's on a pretty hefty cooldown, and it's only usable in combat. But as you can see, it provides a really substantial amount of mana return. And the catch, and what makes it tactical, is that while you are channeling Battle Meditate, you are dramatically increasing your threat towards enemies that you are in combat with within a 30-meter radius. And so what that means is the longer you channel Battle Meditate, the longer you stay in that state regenerating mana, the more likely it is that you're going to pull aggro off of your tank onto you with any of the enemies that you're in combat with. So it's a pretty cool risk versus reward mechanic that allows mana users to have a little bit of control over their mana return in combat, but at pretty sizable risk. Popping Battle Cage there again to reduce the spell damage. Also notice that the NPC wizards, they're using cold spells. They're using, I don't think we fought any fire wizards over here, but they're using a primary school of magic, and they're also using the arcane school. And that's important to note because we've talked a lot about how we want our NPCs to be able to do the same things that our classes do. And that means that when you come across a wizard NPC, they're going to have a dedicated school of focus, maybe a cold wizard, maybe a fire wizard, maybe that other recondite, mysterious spell school type wizard, but then they're also going to weave in those arcane abilities to regenerate their own mana. So at this point, we're about to wrap up here in this section. And we're hopping over to another area of Avendir's Pass, specifically to fight some of these forest dwellers. These forest dwellers are level 13. We have, as a group, bumped up our level to 12, and you can see gained a couple more abilities. One of those abilities is Foreboding Strike, which is in the 4th action slot there. And that ability is a really nice DPS upgrade for Dire Lords, which obviously is going to help them out with tanking and threat generation, but also the Deafening Whisper ability now, and showing off some of that ability usage here in combat against these forest dwellers. These are very difficult NPCs for the level. They are shaman, and so they're using the full shaman kit for their level. And so a Dire Lord is very, very adept at tanking these mobs in particular, because I have not only the ability to mitigate their incoming spell damage, but I can interrupt their healing. So what I've done at the start of this fight is I've allowed the shaman NPC, the Forest Dweller, to use their abilities freely on themselves to heal and on me, but now I'm going to start interrupting and take ownership of this fight. Didn't even get a chance to get the final fang off. So we're going to jump one more time to the final location, and this also is in Avendir's Pass, but we're now at level 30, and we've come across a pretty high-level pocket of content here. Before we got this segment started, though, we noticed this mad wizard kind of wandering up to this section of ogre infiltrators. And you're going to see a really cool aspect of the faction system at work here, because the NPCs have their factions, and they follow the same faction logic that they do when they're dealing with players. Which means that mad wizard, who is on the Shattered Wand faction, is at war with these ogres who are on the Dawn Hunter faction. And when two NPCs that are at war with each other come in contact, this is what happens. Obviously, the ogre victorious being quite a bit higher level than the wizard, but it was a really interesting moment before we got started. So what I didn't notice here is my Provoking Phantoms actually got resisted. And this is when I finally started realizing that one Sacred had already pulled way too much threat for me to... Well, it's partly the threat he pulled, and partly the fact that he was running around like crazy. Another mistake I made there. I tried to get Dire Mark off on Ronick and didn't have him defensively targeted, so I wasted that cast. Popping Harm Shield, increase my DPS threat generation a little bit. So at this stage, to speak to the Shaman a little bit too, we've got enough abilities now at level 30 where we've got two Shaman in the group, but they're both filling pretty different roles. So Kyle's Shaman right now is focused more on debuffing and dotting and generally kind of lowering the strength of our enemy, while David, Ronick, is focused on healing and group support. I'm hovering over these spheres to see if there's any perception-related content to interact with. So this time I look back to check, make sure if Provoking Phantoms did in fact land before I bring it back. Turn and do a little bit of Essence Thief there to close the gap and to build a little buffer of Essence. Going to see the time to kill on these reduced a good bit now that Sacred is back for most of the fight and can continue that wizard DPS. So this fight, we decide to use the Shaman ability, Primal Fury, which Kyle just cast on me there. It's a very powerful ability, and it synergizes really well with Dire Lords because several of their abilities key off of critical hits. What makes it so great is it increases the base crit chance quite a bit, but then every time I get a critical hit, it's going to further increase my critical chance by 1%. So if you have a Dire Lord that is built for critical hits and critical damage, especially if you're dual wielding, that is an extremely powerful synergistic ability to use with Dire Lords. This turned out to be a really great camp spot, right in the level 30 range, even for not a full group. With the abilities we have available to us and the gear that we have, it turned out to be a really great EXP spot for us. Here, as we get ready to finish this segment, we found a mad wizard wandering around and just decided it'd be fun to decimate something much lower level than us, but gave me a chance to use the Dusk ability as well and tear through this wizard's mana. You're going to see Sacred's Fire move land here in a second and chunk that health down really nice. Yeah, there it is. So that's going to conclude our short little look at some of the Dire Lord abilities in combat, and we'll see you back on the stream here.
Well, that was pretty cool. And I had you unmuted. Anyway, you're back. Welcome back. That was pretty cool. That was a lot of fun to watch. We hope that we can do some more of those with more classes as they become available. We did have some more questions coming up in the stream, though, or in the chat, though. So maybe we can take a few more of these questions before we move on to our next segment.
Quick mic check, though. Is this sounding all right to everybody now?
Sounds better to me.
Sounds good to me. Yes, no, I did not die. If you happen to notice in the stream, that was Sacred. Just want to go on record as saying that was Sacred who died and not Ronick. Ronick grabbed aggro but did not die. As far as speaking of aggro, somebody had a question. If I'm in a group and someone aggroes that mob that I'm friendly with, will I lose rep with that faction or will my standing be unaffected?
Your standing would be unaffected as long as you didn't engage in combat with the target. So you'd have to make a decision to stand there and watch your friend die or get engaged. It's up to you.
Get engaged. Go get married.
Actually, Ben, why don't we do patch notes first and then we'll come back and into Q&A.
Okay. Do you have the patch notes song ready for us?
Oh, I'm going to rap tonight's patch notes maybe.
Here we go.
Okay. Let me think. Lay down the beat for me, CP. This is patch notes. There is none other. And if you don't believe me, you can ask your mother. Okay, never mind. Here's patch notes.
I told you 2 verses. You need 2 verses for points. Anybody can do 1 verse. You got to get 2.
Yeah. All right.
You can work on it for next time.
I'll work on it for next time.
Stream.
Yeah.
Next time.
Let's hear them patch notes.
Let's roll into it. So, really, really exciting, busy month. I'm just gonna. Here we go. We brought Avendir's Pass up online. The new reworked Avendir's Pass that we were able to record that footage of there for the videos and had that online for Shakeout 2. We did a complete chat system overhaul. We got the faction system implemented, which we'll do, more of probably a standalone video on to talk about the faction system and all the things that go on with that system. It's a very important system to the gameplay, obviously, and there's a lot of depth that I'd be excited to talk about. We got class and race restrictions hooked up to all of our itemization following our itemization refactor. Got all that hooked up and working now internally. We did a nice rework of the NPC leashing. And just to say a few things about this in particular, there's a difference between NPCs leashing when they're bugged out or when they can't, physically get to the player. We still have some work to do with when it comes to the climbing system or situations where the player is in a location where NPCs should be able to get to them and can't currently because they don't have all of that functionality in place yet. So we are using kind of the bugged leashing system for those moments, even though NPCs do currently have ways to deal with players being in a climbing state. But there's still a lot more kind of robustness that we want to have there, for NPCs to be able to actually climb after you, or be a little bit smarter in how they navigate to you. So for now, we did some reworking with that versus what we would call like a post combat state, where if an NPC kills you, they're not going to leash, or if you run too far away, they're not going to leash. They're going to just walk normally back to their spawn location. So we did some good reworking of that to make that a little bit more waterproof. Uh, with the faction system, we were able to get our aggro and assist radius logic under the hood working a lot better. We did a few experimental things this month with tying the climbing system to the shift key. Um, what we will eventually do, most likely, is have it just be an option where you can say, I want climbing to be always on, where anytime I run into a climbable surface, I want to automatically latch onto it. Or if I want a key, to kind of be the trigger to initiate climbing. So we experimented with that a little bit to make sure that all that felt natural. Um, we got the battle meditation online as well as another kind of experiment to add a tactical aspect to combat. Not going to go into detail on battle meditation because I explained it, pretty thoroughly in the stream. But it is something that we're looking at and we'll continue to look at as more classes come online that have, some of their own intrinsic mana return capabilities. We'll be keeping an eye on that ability. We also got the bag of experimentation online, which is just a temporary name for a bag that allows you to gather, walnuts and apples around the zone in various places and combine them together to create small meals and things like that. Obviously, that will expand. The functionality of that will expand, and it's really the precursor to our scavenging system, which is pretty exciting, and we'll be able to talk about more down the road. We got bind stones implemented. We didn't show that in the stream, but we want to basically get bind stones in place where players can experience how we plan on binding to work, as far as being able to find these bind stone locations, bind to those specific stones, and then have that be where they respawn after death. And reworked a little bit of the Dire Lord ability progression. And then just a whole lot of bug fixes. I'm going to go into a bunch of these here. Improvements to player loading. Fixed a bug with healers not getting experience when only healing during a fight. Fixed ability to pull threat on a friendly NPC with heals on players in combat with that NPC. So reworked and got healer aggro feeling a lot better. Kills by party members now count towards your task progress. So if you're on an active task that requires you to kill certain things, then now if you're in a group, anytime those are killed, it's going to count towards your progress with that group. We fixed several issues with auto run, fixed several bugs related to item stacking. We fixed an issue with defensive buffs that were able to stack with themselves. Fixed some issues with climbing for climbing up, at the top of a climb and making sure that was working in all cases. Fix an issue with seeing other people's equipment unequip and kind of be equipped and be unequipped, and making sure that was updating visually for players. Skip some of these here just to get to some of the more interesting ones. We had an interesting bug in the first shakeout with particle effects on hands kind of building up over time and just becoming these like bright, almost like dying stars and of brightness. And we got that cleaned up. Fixed for NPCs not attempting to continue rotating at their target. Server side only fixed. We adjusted NPC movement speed universally. Fixed several animation blending issues. Fixed several issues with proximity aggro related to the faction system to get all that just really snappy and working as intended. Fixed guards improperly showing as enemies. when they have a neutral or unfriendly relationship to you. Actually did a lot of guard functionality fixes, which some really funny, just really funny situations internally with guards, and essentially guards not knowing what to do in some cases. Because if you were an enemy to the guard, but yourself as a player, but then the NPC that was attacking you was an ally to the guard, but also you were in combat with another player who was allied with the guard was having just a hard time kind of parsing through a lot of that stuff and making the right decision. So we had a lot of players
Sophie's
being
choice right
inadvertently
there.
attacked. Yeah. So we got a lot of that cleaned up, which was really good. And then I've got another list here with a few other key things. We changed lootable props to make sure they were disappearing and relocating on all clients at once. So if you were to pick up an apple or pick up a walnut, something like that off the ground, that it would disappear for all players in that vicinity and reappear where it was supposed to. We migrated our persist system to now use the synchronous API. We fixed an issue with logging out while dead, which would put you into a pseudo immortal state. We fixed leashing NPCs not returning to their proper position if no one was around to see the NPC when it happened. We also fixed an issue with leashed NPCs overriding their return position in a complex fight where there were lots of deaths and aggro swapping going on. And then we improved the AI handling of line of sight casts. So essentially, we made it a little bit more difficult to abuse the line of sight system against NPC casters. So that's probably only half of the list, but for sake of time, I think that's enough. Very busy, very exciting month. Lots getting done, lots of improvements, and barreling forward.
Mhm.
All right, Ray, take some questions.
Yeah, we have a few minutes. Yeah.
So this is sort of half. This is a good question because it kind of hits into the faction. Walking Waste 1 wants to know if Khan and Hale will be in the game. So obviously you want to talk about Khan.
I thought that was a Star Trek reference for a second. I'm like, Khan? I don't... Sorry.
Ben, you need sleep, my friend. You need some sleep.
I know. I'm like, what is he talking about?
I'm not a big Star Trek fan, so I couldn't go with you anywhere on that journey you just took. I shouldn't say I'm not a fan. I just have never really watched it. Anyway, yes, Khan is in the game. Again, when we talk about our faction system, we'll go in a little bit more detail how that works. But essentially, every NPC has a primary faction. And that primary faction is what determines how they interact with you, how they respond to you. And that primary faction has to be discovered. So if you come across an NPC that you've never encountered before with a primary faction that you don't know, then when you hover over that NPC, you'll see a question mark, and they'll have like a yellow reticle and a yellow nameplate. And it's all there to say, hey, you've not encountered this NPC before. And you will need to consider them to discover that faction and unlock or learn what that faction is. And there'll be a UI element that, tracks a lot of that for you and makes it easy to know, what factions you've discovered up to that point. But also NPCs, they have a primary faction, and then they also have several factions that they're like faction ties, we call them. So a particular NPC, like you saw when we were killing the Gadai, you had 3 or 4 faction hits and 3 or 4 faction gains based on all their faction ties. And so the consider system is alive and well. It's even more meaningful now because there is this kind of smaller gameplay loop of discovering these factions. Some factions are going to be resistant to considering. So that might be where a keeper has to come in and, kind of unlock that faction for, players in that vicinity. Some factions also won't be discoverable except by really finding that source faction. Right now, you can discover certain factions just through faction ties. So if we killed a Gadai, for example, in that, if you go back and rewatch the stream, you can see the very first Gadai bandit we kill, you see this long list of factions and all these factions that are discovered when that happens because they're part of the faction ties of that bandit. But if one of those factions was set to not be discoverable that way, then you would not know about it and you wouldn't be able to alter it in any way until you found the source NPC with that primary faction. So it's very deep system. It provides us. I mean, it's also what's triggering that NPC versus NPC content, which is it's just kind of a latent, innate, fun thing to stumble on and encounter sometimes. But then it's also allows us to really leverage that to create intentionally designed areas where players may need to wade into more of that going on a larger scale. The Vale of Azarus comes to mind, for example. If you're familiar with that zone on the map, that zone is ravaged by war, and you could see a lot of that kind of stuff going on in there. And it's meaningful because it's not just, oh look, they're fighting, but I have a role to play here. I have a decision to make on what am I going to do with my factions, and if I'm increasing my faction with this side, what are the implications of that elsewhere in the world? So we're excited to see how a lot of that plays out for the players and the decision making that they have to do.
Yeah, it just kind of adds to the immersion factor. Fizzled wants to know, Dire Lords can dual wield or use a two-hander. Can you speak to what scenarios you'd want to choose one over the other? I'm trying to get some Dire Lord questions in here.
Repeat the first part of the question.
The Dire Lord can dual wield, and it can have a two-hander. So he wants to know what scenarios you'd want to choose one over the other.
There's going to be advantages depending on the weapon type, and one of the things that we've mentioned before in the previous or the very original Dire Lord class reveal is that you would have a bonus to critical hit chance using single-handed or one-handed weapons, and you would have a bonus to critical damage using a two-hander. But that's part of one of the things that we've kind of reimagined. There's some ideation that's happened since then where I feel like we can go a little bit deeper than that, a little bit more interesting than that, and that's just something we'll share a little bit more information about later. But it's really going to come down to which of the different bonuses are going to be more advantageous for you in that particular situation where you would decide between one-handed dual wielding one-handed weapons or using a two-hander.
Great. Murkia's Life wants to know, is there a max amount of debuffs that can be casted on a mob?
There will be, but we haven't locked that number in yet.
Okay. I don't know if we can answer this one yet or not, but I'll ask it anyway. Goofy Warrior Guy wants to know, will all the classes be playable during this Phase 5?
All of the classes that we have officially announced as playable will be playable at some stage throughout Pre-Alpha 5. Yes.
There you go. Congested Gamer would like to know, that's my voice. Congested Gamer would like to know, is the threat system fully implemented? Would healers need to worry about threat from overhealing?
The threat system is fully implemented, and yes, healers would need to worry about threat from overhealing.
You're just that good of a tank. Okay. So this name's gonna be hard. Jobus 187 wants to know, you don't just gain abilities once you level, correct? You will need to find a trainer or gain it through a class quest. Is that correct?
Correct.
These are questions, by the way, that people in pre-alpha may know the answers to, but we are allowing the people at large to maybe know other answers. Okay, we talked a little bit about the bind stones. This is a good question, and it's an opinion question. Zaid God would like to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a success was the shakeout process so far, in your opinion?
I would say 100%.
I was going to say 17 on a scale of 1 to 10.
17. Okay.
Yeah. No, it was what was of particular interest was there were things that we weren't prepared for. We just didn't think of. That's why it's always good to have players come in. And we are getting so much feedback that was of such value. That's why we ended up doing a second round as well. I mean, we did have some problems with login servers as well, which was kind of the whole point of doing the shakeout. But we were learning so much that we had to do a second one just to keep it going for a while. So valuable. So yeah, it was 100% of 7.
10 out of 10.
17 out of 10.
7 out of 7.
You guys
17 out of 17.
Would recommend to a friend.
Yeah, you guys are just making up numbers now. Okay, we'll ask a couple more. Twism family would like to know, will battle meditation look differently from one class to the next? Say a shaman versus a wizard.
Yes, it will. Absolutely, it will. It's a great opportunity. One of the things that really matters a lot is class identity. And so whether we're talking about gear, equipment, whether we're talking about visual effects for abilities, we want to emphasize that as much as we can. And there's a lot of really cool opportunity to get through animation and visual effects. You might see something very different and appropriate for a Dire Lord. If we tie battle meditation, for example, into class resource. So if there's a way for a Dire Lord to use that to gain essence, that has a really unique look to it, right? Like a Dire Lord, pacing back and forth, seething, like kind of letting their hatred consume them, kind of a thing, versus something like a shaman or something like a cleric. There's lots of really cool opportunity to create some interesting animations there to set those things apart. Be really excited about that.
Sacred would like to know, where did you learn to taunt? Okay, we won't have to answer that question. Moving on. John Butcher would like to know, will there be any lore released in the near future? Ben, you want to talk about that at all?
Yes.
There you go.
I love these yes or no questions. It's just yes. Yeah, we do actually. Dave is working with Lore Master JN, and we are working on getting some content up for you, which is pretty cool stuff too. We've got there's a lot of stuff that we haven't really worked into the old site, so there's gonna be a lot of fresh stuff in there. It'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, it'll be much more organized and easily accessible as well. Schlocky would like to know, will certain dungeons/raids be locked to allied enemies of certain factions?
If I understand the question correctly, no. There won't be any faction-related lockouts for dungeons.
Okay, and finally, will Joppa get a haircut before the next stream?
Oh, we can't talk about that. Sorry.
Okay, that's
no
like
on that one.
Don't know.
No beans.
It's just that we don't know. It's we haven't seen the design.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't even know.
Okay.
It's not even an internal discussion. We haven't met about it yet. So
we've got several things we need to talk about. First, we got to talk about Star Wars. We got to talk about like our number system.
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Losing a lot of geek cred in this
stream. You just lost about half our audience, my friend.
Wow. We have 4 viewers left. Thanks, Chris.
Sorry.
Joppa! Okay. I think we'll call it there.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been a pleasure as always. And if you're interested in checking out more pre-alpha streams yourself, you can head on over to pantheonmmo.com. Pledge packages. There are still pledge packages available for VIP packages, which include pre-alpha testing, which is still going to be going on for a while yet. We will be making more announcements as to when the next sessions are, but expect those to be coming out soon. Once again, from all of us here at Visionary Realms, thank you for your continued support. Thank you for joining us. Chris, Ronak, anything else to say?
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate the support.
It was a lot of fun. I can't say enough what it means to have players in and playing. And we are trying to go as fast as we can to get this game ready and to make it as good as it can possibly be. So thank you for the continued support, the patience. And onward and upward all the way. Cannot wait till the next time we can do this and show more and get some more of you in here. Let's do it. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.